Fuck.
What's up, everybody? I'm giving this another shot because once again, video got corrupted. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but it's cool. I decided to record this one with my phone, so we're trying something new, and I decided not to try and refilm this video yesterday after it crashed because I'm feeling really excited about talking about my experience so far, and after the video crashed, I just was not in a good, I was feeling very frustrated and drained. So I decided to go ahead and post a day late and hopefully come back at it with a renewed sense of energy and excitement. And yeah, I'm feeling good. I've got my Labradorite here in my hand. I've got my green cubby light going, heart on my shirt, my candles going in the background. So the intention of this video is to speak from the heart, to talk about my experience so far and the results I've started to notice. I feel like last week especially, I focused a lot on the specific activities that I've done or that I did. And this week, I want to talk less about the specifics of the artist date, etc., and more about my experience and things that I've noticed in terms of growth in the 4 weeks that have passed so far. I think this is a good time to stop and reflect because as I read chapter 5 yesterday, I noticed a shift in the program. So I think the first 4 weeks to me really stuck out as kind of like an excavation, like uncovering the true self and the artist within and starting to understand who I am, what that looks like, exploring how it feels to embody that a little bit, and just familiarizing myself with my true nature and my inner artist. Whereas the vibe that I'm getting from week 5 is more about, okay, now we kind of understand what that looks like, and now let's start taking actions that align with this true nature. And it's not like a stark shift. I think it's still a lot of excavating and uncovering, learning about myself. The analogy that she uses in the book is like a foggy mirror or a steamy mirror. And as you wipe the mirror, the image of yourself starts to become clearer. And the more that you wipe the mirror, the clearer and clearer the image becomes and the reflection becomes. So, that's what we're doing. We're continuously wiping this mirror and making the image clearer and clearer. And so that's going to continue going forward. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot to reflect on. So as I've thought about this, some words have come up for me. A big one for me is agency. So I'll start with that. Agency to me means that things feel more accessible. I feel like I have more of an ability to do the things that I think of. So for example, if I have a creative idea, where in the past I would often have the idea and then I would very clearly see all these roadblocks to why I couldn't do it, whether I didn't have the supplies or the time, etc. I'm now feeling like I have the resources I need. These things don't feel insurmountable. They feel much more manageable. I'm learning to bite off smaller pieces and focus on those. So breaking things down into, more manageable chunks, and actually doing things. If I have an idea, like executing it and trying it, that kind of transitions me into this idea of perfectionism, which I talked about last week. And another word that's come up for me, which is kind of like definition. So what I mean by that is, and you're gonna have to bear with me because I swear this all connects, but what I just talked about is this idea of getting a clearer sense of self. To me, what that means is learning what the boundaries of my true nature are, of who I am, where I end and where other people's influence and input begins, and external influences, separating the internal from the external in regard to how I perceive myself and how I express myself. Just becoming aware, making changes where I can, but really just bringing awareness to it. And through that, finding empowerment and confidence. And so how that ties into perfectionism is, I think, for so long, I have looked towards the finished product to be the thing that defines me. So an example of this would be the music that I post on Instagram. What I'm posting out there is the finished product, and that's what people are seeing and consuming. And that's kind of the response to that is where I was getting my sense of worth and self-definition. And that puts a lot of pressure on the finished project. I think that is what leads to perfectionism. If that is what people are going to be seeing and the only thing they're going to be seeing, and that's what they're going to be using to create their perception of me and how I'm going to be defining myself, then there's obviously going to be a lot of pressure on the finished product. But I think what this process has started to allow me to do is appreciate the process, the creation process, not the finished project so much, but the act of creating. And through that, I'm able to define myself in new ways. And the way that the final product is received or interpreted suddenly becomes less important, because I actually talked to my coach about this today, and I love the way she put it. Like, once you're finished with something, you're no longer engaging with it. It's done. So in some ways, there's like a separation between me and the final project. Whereas when I'm working on something, like, that is where the discovery is happening. That is where I'm learning who I am and separating myself from the external noise. So yeah, I think all of these things tie together, right? My sense of agency and the ability to get things done is enhanced by my reduced emphasis on the finished product, which also allows me to explore things without the pressure of perfectionism. Also, most of the creating that I'm doing is in a private setting. So I'm not exposing my creative process or the finished results, any of it, to the external world. And that allows me to explore it a lot, like, in a safer way. Yeah. Sorry, I just said a lot there. I'm just going to say it. I was really happy with the video I created yesterday. I felt like I covered a lot of these things, and I covered them better than I feel like I am now. And it's really hard to recognize that because my intention with this video was not to recreate the video I created yesterday, because unfortunately that video is gone and I don't remember everything I said because I didn't script it out. And so I wanted to approach this one, covering the same topics but treat it as its own thing. And it's hard because all I can think about is, what did I say in my last video? How did I say it? Because I really liked that. So I just want to mention that because I thought I could avoid it, and it's coming up for me right now. But yeah, I'm enjoying the process, and I'm learning that the presence that I practice now is what defines the future. Everything is the process, and I've talked about this in my previous videos. So how can I appreciate that more? So yeah, I'm gonna pause for a second and regather my thoughts. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. And I want to focus on perfectionism some more for a second because my experience with it, I think, is important. And so, learning to enjoy the process, to me, it's been hard because I think what perfectionism is when I sit down to create a project or whatever, I have this image in my mind. And the goal, hypothetically, is to recreate what I have in my head in reality, whether it's music or painting or ceramics. The truth is that my skill level at a lot of these things isn't where it needs to be for me to fully realize the image in my head the exact way that I have it in my head. And so that can be very disheartening, and that's what I've struggled with traditionally, is when I go to create this amazing thing I have in my head and it does not, sometimes not even resemble it at all, or it turns out differently, or there's, for example, I have been making incense holders out of the clay that I bought and painting them. And in my head, I have this idea of these beautifully painted, intricate patterns and very fine brush strokes that are, meticulous and sharp and crisp. And then I go to paint mine and the brush doesn't behave the way I expect it to, and neither does the paint. And, I don't have the technique or the motor skills to create the things that I want to create the way that I want to. And that can be that is very frustrating at times. But I think what has shifted is that I'm now finding excitement in that and curiosity and motivation. So when I create a brush stroke and it doesn't look how I want it to look, what can I do with that? Where can I go so that it still becomes something I am proud of and that is cool? It forces me to think creatively. It's also exciting because it's like an experiment, okay, so that didn't work. What can I do differently next time to achieve the result? What are some things that I liked about this process and what did I not like? Starting to learn how to create for fun and avoid the pressure. If something is not enjoyable to me or it's stressing me out, don't do it. Try something else. Do a different project or come up with a new method or change the vision in my head or let go of it. There's all these things that I'm able to now explore and play with, and variables that I can control that allow the process to still be fun and exploratory and playful and creative. Whereas when the finished product is the only goal and you have a very specific, unwavering vision of what that needs to be, that creates pressure. It sucks the fun out of it. It makes it very hard to release it or share it with anyone until it looks exactly how you want it to. And so it's very limiting. So yeah, that's kind of my experience with perfectionism. And as I learn to explore these things in the process, these are adding to my sense of self and my sense of what I'm capable of and the things I'm interested in and curious about. It's all constantly adding to the mix of who I am. I'm following that internal curiosity and excitement. And then, like I said earlier, another important part is as I learn the boundaries of who I am, that also means understanding which parts of me I've internalized that really aren't me. So things that I've picked up from other people or social conditioning from society, things that I have convinced myself are me that aren't. These deeply internalized beliefs that can be very difficult to recognize because I have internalized them in a way that I recognize them as me. So it's very much, pulling apart and reassembling the different aspects into a more clear picture of who I am. So I'm gonna, let's see. Well, you know what, real quick, I'll talk about an example of an external thing that I've internalized that I'm now working on. So I have a deeply internalized shame and sense of guilt around rest. It goes way, way back and comes from a variety of sources, but I find it very difficult to just relax and rest. Even when I'm laying down and trying to rest, I'm thinking, my mind's elsewhere. I'm thinking I should be doing this, I could be doing this, blah, 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 blah. That is something I've picked up from outside. I know this. But it doesn't change the fact that it's present when I do try and rest. But by being aware of the fact that that is something I've brought in from outside, it opens the door to me changing it. And so that was actually a big focus this week, was rest. Ironically, what my feeling of shame around rest creates in me is a sense of restlessness. That restlessness I use as a tool to avoid sitting still and resting. But it also causes me to feel more exhausted. So the more restless I am, the more exhausted I am, the more I need rest. The more exhausted I am and the more I need rest, the more restless I get. And it's this feedback loop that is not sustainable. And so, yeah, just giving you an example. I wanted to talk about real quick an exercise that I did this week that I enjoyed. So I revisited this chart that I did in week 1, and I decided to go ahead and do this week's in a different color. And I'm sure I'll revisit this again. So I'll plan to continue using different colors, so we can kind of see how this shape changes. Now, I did this at the beginning of the week, so it has changed a little since I drew it, but the categories are spirituality, exercise, play, work, friends, and romance. And the areas that I noticed shifts in were exercise, play, and friends. So you can see play grew quite a bit, through my art and through ecstatic dance, which I went to again this week. There's a number of things that have increased my sense of play and playfulness. Friends, I'm slowly putting myself back out there and spending time with friends and hanging out. Feels good. Exercise went down a little bit. I attribute that to the restlessness I've been feeling. It was hard for me to focus on doing one thing and find the motivation. But that's okay. I expect this to constantly be changing and shifting week to week. But the good news is that generally the trend is growth. Spirituality stayed about the same. Work. Romance, I did go on a date this week. Whatever. That was after I did this, though, so I guess I could increase that as well. So yeah, I love this exercise, honestly. Excited to see how this continues to change. Yeah. I'm probably going to pause again because I have the ability to, and I need to regroup. I'm feeling very scattered. So I'll be back. Okay. There's 2 more things I want to talk about, and then I figured I would show you some of the things I've worked on this week. I'm trying to be conscious of time, but if it goes long, fuck it. Anyways, I wanted to talk about Artist Date. Not specifically what I did so much as kind of a revelation I had, a realization I came to this week. I was really lucky to have a great conversation with a friend this weekend about Artist Date. And basically what happened was I've described the restlessness I felt, and my day to do the Artist Date, the free day I had, came and went, and I really wasn't able to motivate myself to do anything. I had an idea that I was kind of set on, which was I wanted to go through my parents' album collection and find a vinyl and listen to it and do some kind of activity associated with it. And when the day came, I was feeling restless and I couldn't really motivate myself to do what I needed to do, which was pull my record player out of storage and clean it off. It's been in storage for a while. It probably needs a new needle. There was all these things that needed to be done in order for me to listen to this vinyl, and it felt like a major roadblock. So I just kind of kicked the can down the road, and it basically came to it that on Sunday, I still hadn't done my Artist Date, and I was feeling all this pressure. And basically what she said to me was, like, I think you're overcomplicating it. Like, why don't you simplify it? Why don't you just listen to it digitally? Choose an album you haven't heard before and stream it. And wow, like what a relief that was to hear her say that, because it's so true. Like it can be that simple. Not every week has to be like some big ornate thing. The intention behind these dates is to fill the well, and that can be done in a variety of ways. Also, done is better than perfect always. So it's better to just do something, even if it's a modified, easier version, like streaming an album versus playing it on vinyl. It's better to do that than it is to not do anything at all. And I love that perspective. And I think it's something I really want to focus on going forward, is how much pressure am I putting on myself? Am I taking the fun out of these dates? Like same as with the creative process. The intention is to have fun and to learn and grow. Am I sucking all of the fun out of it by being a perfectionist about how I show up to these dates? Like, keep it simple. As Kenny Beats would say, don't overthink shit. Like, it doesn't have to be that complicated. If the record player is causing problems, if it's too much of an obstacle, stream it. Like, this is the 21st century. We have the technology, and I love that perspective. I am so grateful, because I think it was a good wake-up call and a good awareness, and it did allow me to, on Sunday afternoon, do a modified version of the exercise. And so just to say what I did, I listened to an album called 1977 by Ana Tijoux, which is probably not how you pronounce it, but she's a French-born Peruvian hip-hop artist, and her album is from 2010. Freaking sick, so good. But I streamed it, and I played it over speakers, and I played with Legos while I listened to it. I've listened to it again since then, just because it was such a good album. Highly recommend. But I wanted to throw that out there, because this perfectionism thing is everywhere. And so I'll definitely be focused on that going forward. I think it's fun to go all out sometimes, and other times the situation calls for something else. And being flexible and adaptive and just taking the pressure out of it is so important, I believe. So yeah. Fuck, what was the other thing? There was something else. Gonna pause one more time. Okay. This will be the last thing. There was a quote on Insight Timer, which is the meditation app I used yesterday, that really stuck out to me, which is, don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you plant. And that's a quote from Robert Louis Stevenson. And I love that because it echoes something I said earlier in the video, which is, I believe that the quality of my presence now is what dictates the quality of my future. And while I think goals are important to have, and it's okay to think about what you want in the future, I think that's important as well. The way to ensure that you achieve those things and to ultimately get where you want to go is to focus on the quality of the present. What are the seeds that I'm planting now? You know, like, because if you plant the seeds and you water them and you tend to them every day and you put your energy into those, they will grow the plant that they're supposed to. You have to trust that part of the process. You can't see the future. You just have to assume it's going to work out and do what you can to ensure it. And so just wanted to throw that out there. It really resonated with me. It feels very relevant as I go into week 5, which places such an emphasis on taking aligned action, and doing the things that align with my true self. That is where I want to be focused on, is what am I doing now, and is it aligned with my true self and the things I want for myself, and less on the future, less on the finished product, right? Anyways, the last thing I'm going to do in this video, because it feels all over the place, although I know it's not, but I want to show you some of the things I worked on. So this is just a few things, but this is one of my incense holders I created. So, you know, incense goes in here. And honestly, I love it. It was super fun to create. Here's another incense holder I'm working on. It's actually a work in progress. This one has like a little area for cones, incense cones, but it can also do yeah. And then the last thing I have, which I'm really excited to be getting into this because I've wanted to for a while, is lino cut stamps and stuff, printing. So it was my mom's birthday yesterday and she loves to bike, so I created this lino cut stamp, which I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think it looks very cool. This is a test card that I made for her. But yeah, super fun. And now I can use this stamp in other projects. And yeah, that's where I'm gonna wrap it. This is a long video and that's totally fine. But it's also the second time I've recorded it. Hopefully going forward, I won't have any issues. I did order a camera. Honestly though, I might stick with my phone if this works out well. We'll see. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As always, it really does mean a lot to me. I love hearing your feedback, and I hope that things are going well for you on your journey. I'm always curious to hear about it, so please feel free to reach out to me in the comments or message me directly, whatever. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next week for my week 5 reflection.